It was 2012. And so we've been sort of in it for, going on almost a decade. And
wow.
I guess it's like one of those things where in some ways, like, we believed in this was our vision sort of the future. I think in some ways we're ahead of where we thought we'd be, and some ways behind. I think like we were thinking, in 2014, 15, and 16, there was a lot of chatter that like Wall Street's coming into Bitcoin, and it really did not happen. And it's totally fine because it's been very much an individual revolution, and Bitcoin, at least in our view, is all about empowering the individual. It's really why we built Gemini to get people into the Bitcoin world, and this alternative system that we believe creates greater choice, independence, and opportunity. I think once you don't have alternatives, or you're locked into a system or jailed into it, that's really not great for the individual and empowerment. And so, look, I think in some ways it's amazing to see sort of what's happened, and it's at times surreal. Sometimes you wake up and you're like, wow, this has actually happened. You're in a big way. But there's the other part of me says, like, we're so early. I mean, I want to use a baseball metaphor, but I know I need to use like a cricket, like the first wicket or whatever. We're literally just getting started. We're like 1/10 of the way to the $10 trillion market cap. Oh, and then you look at what's happening to the dollar, the Fed, the debt burdens, the money spending, the money printing that's been happening before the pandemic for the last decade. And then what's been happening to get us through that. So you see what's happening over here. You see Elon Musk doing this, Jack Dorsey making these moves over there. It starts to become completely irresponsible not to at least have a story. Like, maybe your positions were not ready, but you have to have thought about it. I think if you have cash on your balance sheet, if you're a CEO, and I actually think that, like, this I can't remember if it was last year or this year, but the corporate treasury putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet started, right? At some point, those dominoes will continue to fall. And like Cameron said, Fortune 500 companies, all of them will have something, right? And then at some point, a central bank will fall. Central banks, their muscle memory has been to stack gold. Even when they say everything's happening, everything's fine, this is normal, all this money printing, no big deal, nothing to see here. Don't listen to what they say. Look at what they do. And their balance sheets, they've been stacking gold. Okay, so that behavior, doesn't indicate that everything's okay to me, right? Because they're getting this hard money. And then they'll discover that the hardest money in the galaxy is Bitcoin. So at some point, there will be a central bank that starts putting Bitcoin on its balance sheet. So when you think of, and then it's just bananas, right? And when you think of how early we are in the corporate treasuries doing this, and then the fact that central banks will do this because this behavior they do with gold, and if you do it with gold, you are going to do it. It's not an if, it's a when. I see a path to 10 trillion very easily, but as we know, Bitcoin's a lot more than just a metal. The open source project, gold built for the internet, it can do so much more. So, we published that thought piece of the case for 500,000 Bitcoin, but it's conservative. It could be a lot more. And look, I think there's also like even some intermediate steps, right? There's pension funds, and then there's sovereign wealth funds, which are sort of a proxy. The state would be like the LP of that, or the central bank. I'm sure they all have slightly different structures, but there are some really innovative and brilliant sovereign wealth funds out there. Singapore, Temasek, and all that stuff. These guys and gals are all long, they're long tech. They understand that. They're out on the curve, on the frontier. So it's just really a matter of time. But it's going to be mad dashes, as Tyler mentioned. I mean, I every once in a while I remind people on Twitter that there's only 21 million Bitcoin, and there's 46 million millionaires on the planet right now. There's not a full Bitcoin to go around. You don't want to be the millionaire who's not in that 21 million bucket.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
Then you're no longer going to be a millionaire, right? And it's like being at a party, the music stops. You got to find that seat, and buying Bitcoin is like buying a pro rata seat on this network of money, the store of value network, and really time is of the essence. One other thing is you're starting to see a lot of these big banks like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Boney get into Bitcoin. That's all driven by their customers. Their private wealth customers are seeing what's happening with the price of Bitcoin. They're like, how do I get exposure? They're like, we don't know. We don't know how to do it.
All the announcements coming out are that these banks are allowing their wealthy clients to buy Bitcoin. It's not. That's the announcement.
Because they're freaking out because the wealthy clients are seeing they're seeing the price of Bitcoin, the best performing asset of the last decade. It's going to be the best this decade, and they can't touch it. So that's driving it. That's what drives all these banks. Is ultimately it's the business case and the demand from their customers. And so, yeah, as the price keeps going up, like everybody's like, what are we doing here? The risk is sitting on the sidelines. The risk is doing nothing. I think that's the ultimate. Like that's the people are like, oh, how do you get comfortable with Bitcoin and holding Bitcoin? Like, how do you get comfortable not holding Bitcoin? Like that's so much more risky. I would never take that over the last decade or the next decade or the one thereafter. So like, and that the way I think about it, the way you think about it, Peter, the way Cameron thinks about it, that's rapidly becoming the way everyone thinks about it. They're like, wait, I don't have chips on the table. That's kind of reckless and insane. Bitcoin's a simple idea when you boil it down. It's go long the future of store of value money, the future, reserve currency. Yes, you're gonna literally hodl it for years. Don't look at it, and you're gonna ask someone to collect a fee on that advice. It's kind of a hard sell. And so I think a lot of the resistance sometimes is this baked in belief of diversification and portfolio construction, and people making those straightforward, simple bets on the future sometimes become elusive in those environments. So I think that's part of it. And I think there may be a belief that, a little bit of a resistance, right? In people who have been in capital markets for 20 years and they sort of climbed the mountain, they learned, became experts at what they do. And then all of a sudden there's this new thing over here and it requires you to walk down the mountain and learn again. And stomaching that and becoming like a beginner, a total noob where you can't just reach back on years of experience. It's very humbling. I mean, I get humbled by Bitcoin on a daily basis, right? You have to be humbled, be prepared to be humbled over and over again. Your patience will be tested. And I think for a lot of people, that's just not an attractive path.
Do you want to know one thing about crypto? I made over 3,000% in profit in a few weeks. Fact is, the traditional financial system, the traditional money system makes you poor, not rich. If you want to earn $500,000, $1 million, you have to wait until you're 50, 60, 70 in the traditional financial system, and you probably will still be broke. And you will be old. This is not a sexy combination, as you can imagine. But the question is, how can you start in crypto and make these profits? Where to invest? Where to start? My name is Gunnar and I'm from Germany, as you can hear, and things are a little bit different in Germany. More about that later on. Fact is, there are lots of different cryptocurrencies. It's a gigantic universe where beginners and professionals get easily lost. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are 7 key steps you need to follow to become successful in this market. You have to know them, and if you fail one of them, it's literally impossible to succeed in this market. Just an example, one of the key points is your exchange, and one of the biggest are, for example, Binance and Coinbase. These are trusted and well-established exchanges, but, and this is a big but, You won't find the super profitable coins on those exchanges. The unknown super profitable coins that get gigantic profits are not traded on those kind of exchanges. They are traded on much smaller insider platforms that are barely known. And I can tell you what those super secret exchanges are and why they are so profitable. And another super important thing are the right information sources. The point is, the internet is gigantic. There are hundreds and hundreds of YouTube channels, blogs, pages, and much more. And there are also market makers and influencers. For example, Elon Musk, he is not a crypto guy, but the moment he recommended Dogecoin, it went through the roof, to the moon, so to say. But why did he recommend it? Where did he hear it from? He didn't hear it from newspapers. And believe me, he is listening to someone. But you have to know who, and you have to react before he is reacting. This is really important. And these are only 2 of the 7 steps you have to follow in order to be successful in crypto. And if you want to know all of these steps in much more detail, and if you want to have a comprehensive checklist, here's what you should do. There is a link below this video. Click on this link and you will get the opportunity to subscribe to my channel. Click on the link and you will see a video where I explain the next steps. So see you soon. Click on the link now. I'll see you there.